we have Naomi, who has made her frock from an old duvet cover. It's rather bright for the 1940s, but each to their own. Make do and mend. Hello. Stop showing. Okay. Hello and welcome to For Knit's Sake, where I'm currently covering the A to Z of crafting, and today's episode is M for Make, Do and Mend, and it's another history episode. If you're new here, I tried something new with this scarf. I wouldn't answer the door to the postman, but I'm wearing it on camera for the world to see. Anyway, I did a historic episode, which was for International Women's Day, and that was for Knitting Spies, so check that out. I love doing that, and I love doing this one too. I sat down to research it, and I thought it would take like an hour, but I've done so much research, watched so many videos, read so many things, looked at so many things. I got properly sucked into it. So I hope you stick with me, and I hope you enjoyed the awkward video with me at the beginning. You'll see later it's to replicate a clip from the 1940s of a Make, Do and Mend exhibition. So it's from an old duvet cover. It was actually the first piece of clothing I sewed, and it's a self-drafted shift dress inspired by 60s because that's my favourite fashion era. You'll see this here. This is a skirt from the opposite side of this duvet cover. Probably should have put a top on my dolly because boobs. Anyway. Let's begin. I imagine that many of you have heard the Make, Do and Mend saying many times, but I want to go into what it really means. So I'm going to start with a general idea of it, and then we'll go from there. So Make, Do and Mend is using scraps of fabric to make clothes, using scraps of knitting to make toys, pulling out knitted clothes to make to use the yarn again. So if you've got a jumper that's too small, you pull the yarn out, make something else with it. Using rubber from tyres and other such things to mend shoes, saving straws from your drinks, caps from milk. Basically, imagine your day-to-day life and imagine saving everything from it. Because Make, Do and Mend is no waste, and I know people say no waste now, but we really do have waste if you think about it. No matter how hard you try, there's always waste. We say no waste now, and I think it's a trend. I think it's just unrealistic and impossible, whereas back then it was possible and it was realistic. If your cheaply bought socks got a hole in them, would you darn them, or would you just go and buy another pair of cheap socks if you could? And even if you can darn, but you can't be bothered, it's just so easy to go and get another pair of socks, whereas back in the Make, Do and Mend days, that wasn't possible. Children back then were taught knitting and sewing in school, so the Make, Do and Mend was a war effort that involved all ages. It also came into hygiene and washing. In the show How We Used to Live, and this is an episode I watched on the Make, Do and Mend, the mum says to the daughter who wants a bath, no more than 5 inches. I think we all know, well I hope we all know, that food was rationed, buying new clothes was rationed too, because fabric was needed for the war, to make uniforms and for the general war effort. I've mentioned in my previous video that knitting's been around basically forever, and it's the same with sewing, but not everyone wanted to make, do and mend, and not everyone could. I know I mentioned just now, and in my video before, that people taught knitting in school. I'm just going to that again. I mentioned in my previous video that knitting has basically been around forever. And it's the same with sewing. But not everybody wanted to make, do and mend. And not everybody could. Because I know I mentioned that knitting was taught in school, sewing was taught in school. But that doesn't mean that you go away from school knowing how to knit or sew. It doesn't mean you pick it up easy. You could fail the lesson. There's so many reasons why you don't take knitting and sewing into your adulthood life. And that was the same back then during the war. So imagine going from buying new clothes to rationing and mending them. It must have been so overwhelming if you didn't know how. Because making your own clothes, I mean, that in the back then people like to dress properly. You know what I mean by properly. They didn't just bang on a trackies or whatever to go to the shop. They like getting dressed properly. So to make clothes for properly dressed people, to make advanced clothes, basically, isn't it? That to someone who's never sewn or can't sew, that just sounds daunting. Because of this, make, do and mending classes started to appear all over the country, and that really helped people like learn how to fix, mend. And it's not only fix and mending, it's like washing clothes. So if you've got a hand knitted item, how to wash it, how to dry it. I look at the posters from that era, the make, do and mend posters, and the people who designed them, I think they knew it was going to be overwhelming for everyone. Some people, everyone, most people, I don't know. They knew it was going to be overwhelming to make your own clothes, mend them. So the designers, I think, tried really hard to make, do and mend fun and creative. So one poster has buttons, with smiley faces. It's like a little doll type toy thing made up of sewing notions, and the face is a little smiley face button, which I thought was really cute. This one isn't fun, but I love the graphic design aspect of it. It seems so modern for that era. It's just so simple and so effective, but it says what it's about. It's a booklet on how to wash certain things and put decorative patches on top of clothing to fix it. But it's so simple. And I don't know, there's something, I think it's the colours, and I don't know, the graphic design is not, I did it in college, but it's kind of fun. But if you back then you saw it, you just think it was a normal poster compared to the toy doll type thing. But for me personally, the graphic design aspect of it, like, I love that poster. A big part of make, do and mend was like mending. So darning knitted things, decorative patches on to fix clothing. Sewing buttons back on, like some were simple things, some are really complex things. Sewing decorative patches on top of dresses, suits, anything really to fix it. It was just, back then it was just, we need to fix it. This is something I love because no matter what, history seems to find a way to come back up into the future. The decorative patches to fix clothing is now called visible mending, which I love. There's a video later where Harrods in London do a fashion show, and it's just like this lady's made this dress out of a dust sheet, and now we know that's called upcycling, which is, at first I was like, but then I thought about it and I thought it's so cool that has come back. So I love that mending and visible stitching, visible mending has come back as a fashion, I guess it is now. And another poster which I love, it's got a happy sewer, like a lady who's made a suit and she's smiling. It's a photograph and she looks really happy. So this is what I'm on about, where the government tried to make it fun and cheerful, creative. Next to that lady, it says, add cheer to a plain dark suit with contrasting collar and bands and matching fringed gloves for fun. So when you think make, do, mend, before I talked about it, you probably just think it was boring, they just mended things. You imagine it not being creative, but it was really, really creative, like, people really got into it. This next lady is going to haunt my dreams. She's called Mrs. So-and-so, and it was a character that the government created. This is not fun. This is not creative. It's creepy. How dead are her eyes? Like, and then I found a video of her, but she has cute little dancing scissors, dancing needle, dancing thread, and that bit's fun, so it's not going to haunt my dreams as much. I'm sharing the picture with you now, but in my head I can just picture her staring at me with those dead eyes. So I'm going to go back to people feeling overwhelmed about the make, do and mend. There's a video from the Ministry of Information in 1943, which is like the posters. It's fun, it's creative, but it's a video. And it's a family sitting around a table and they're running low on their rationing clothes. And then their clothes come to life and start talking to them. So there's like a suit and it's like, I could be a dress. and then this lady's like, oh, my wedding dress. And the wedding dress like, I could be a nightie or knickers. It's really fun. Because you just think as the olden days being old and boring, but this whole make, do, amend, I know it was hard. I know people didn't want to do it, but I feel like they made the most of it. It was just something that needed to be done, I guess. And I feel like this video shows that, because first of all, you got the actors in it, and that must have just been so fun to shoot. And then this is what I was talking about at the beginning about me copying it. So the Board of Trade for the Harrods store in London created an exhibition called How to Make, Do and Mend. And the exhibition includes a fashion display of clothes made from other clothes and items from around the house. And the narrator says, make, do and mend needn't be unfashionable. And the more I'm talking, the more I realise that people really that it was fun. They did say, how many times have I said that? Let's just list what was in the show. There's a lady next to a mic, there's models walking up and just explaining what they have made. So the first piece is a patchwork dressing gown made from old pieces of material. The lining was formerly a dust sheet. And then these things are really fashionable. Like, you think make, do and mend, and you picture, even though it's fun and creative, you still think, oh, it'd be boring. It's in black and white, but you can still see how much effort has gone into it. And how colourful they must be, because the black and white's all over the shop, so I think they must have been quite colourful. The next piece was pyjamas made from pieces of material found in the attic. And the lady who's like hosting it is like, presumably that was Granny's old sheet cover. But she used the actual word for a sheet cover. I can't remember what it's called. But then you see people in the crowd talking to each other and being like, because it's a historic video, sometimes you forget that these people are people. They were people. So when you see them being like, what? It just brings back, oh yeah, this was real. I just thought, I don't know, that amused me because you could just watch if it wasn't for the crowd, you'd be like, all right, this is a historic video. But then you see the crowd and it's just like, oh yeah. Like, imagine now if you couldn't buy any more clothes and then you were told to make your own clothes and then you saw clothes being made from an old bed sheet. You'd be like, really? The next one is a frock made from husband's old trousers with half a yard of new material. And the half yard of new material would have been that lady using her coupons. And then there's a schoolchild, and her frock is old pieces of material. And then the coat was her older sister's, which they downsized. And they use a fabric to make a hat. I like that hat. That is a nice hat. And then lastly is a skirt and blazer from a husband's old suit. And at the end, the lady explains that all garments made in Make, Do and Mend are entirely exclusive. And to the men, look up your favourite clothes before you leave home in the morning. And then this really serious fashion show from Harrods of London clips to a guy leaving his house with no trousers on. And this is what I'm on about with the fun part of it, like the people tried really hard to see the fun side of it. So the guy's there in his shirt and he's like, he gets his umbrella, he hooks it over his arm, he puts his gloves on, and then he just continues to walk down the street like it's a normal day. And he's got his socks with his suspenders on, and it's just really funny because, like I say, you just think old times are boring or make, do, and mend. The war, serious make, do, and mend, and then like the show that, which I just thought was really funny. Now back to the serious side. Make, do and mend was important for the government, and not only for rationing clothes, but also because of what it would make the country look like if they were to walk around with clothes that were holey, that were stained, that were torn. It would look like everyone had given up and the country was now weak and an easy target. I just want to talk about the phrase for a minute, like make, do and mend. I think that is such a clever statement. It's so simple, but it gets the point across so well. You read it and understand what you need to do. And it's just like 4 words, but it really has an impact. Make do. Don't buy anything new. Use what you have as they are. So trousers can be turned into shorts. Things you have already, you just use as they are already. And use those things to make other things. And mend everything in your life, not only clothes but appliances too. So this is obviously a crafty podcast and fashion, but there's loads of leaflets on how to fix a mop, how to fix... not a kettle. I can't remember. But there's loads of leaflets that explain how to fix things around your house because, yes, clothing was rationed, yes, food was rationed, and so were, like, appliances. And that was even before the war and all this thing. Like, back then, people didn't waste things. Like, you watch Call the Midwife, and that's set in the 50s, and then there's Fred fixing his telly. Like, you know what do you know what an telly looks like if you're quite young? Basically, a teddy is not like, it wasn't that thin. And even when I was a kid, they weren't that thin. So in the 50s, especially, they were this big square. They were square. They weren't wide. They were square. And the back piece was like this big, and it was full of loads of cables. So obviously you can go in and fix the cables and whatever. Things were made to last back then as well, and things were made to be fixed. People had skills, and if they didn't have skills, they knew someone with skills, so they would learn it off them. And then when the Make Do Amend came in, there was leaflets on how to fix things. Onto clothing coupons now. Clothing rations started in June 1941 and lasted until March 1949. The main aim was to reduce spending by the public. And I found this fascinating. They needed the clothes factories to make weapons. And then when buying new clothes, a customer would use their coupons as well as their money. Every piece of clothing had a coupon value shown with the price, and more coupons were needed depending on the amount of fabric and labour used to create the piece of clothing. You would have, like in that video when the lady's like using a half a yard of new fabric, she can't go wrong. She can't make a mistake because she's used her precious coupons to get that fabric, so she needs to be able to make that and not buy any more. She bought enough just for that dress. And she had to use that just for that dress. She didn't buy it a spare, but just in case, she bought the correct amount for that dress. As a sewer who's had a bad few days sewing, that amount of stress, oh God, I would honestly just mend. I would never make new clothes because the stress of doing it wrong and ruining it. This is a sewn podcast, right? And I've got these things that I've sewn and that. But I've had a bad time these past few days. So thankfully, sitting down to research this took my mind off it and made me fall in love with sewing again. So I mentioned before that it was about fixing things and, you know, fixing your kettle. And it also was about food. In October 1939, the British Ministry of Agriculture launched the Dig for Victory campaign. In a time of rationing, people across the country were encouraged to grow their own food. The campaign resulted in the creation of 3.5 million allotments in Britain by 1943. The campaign produced numerous radio broadcasts, poster displays in public places, leaflets and recipes, new mascots, creepy again, Potato Pete and Dr. Carrot, and even songs and slogans. The leaflets and videos were on how to garden and plant food, so basically from the beginning to the very end. So they talked you through every single aspect of growing your own food. Public parks and fields were used to grow vegetables. London AFS men, which is London Auxiliary Fire Service men, spent their time gardening during the waiting time. During the lunch hour, women who worked in factory grounds would use part of their lunch hour to do some gardening and plant food. And children grew food as part of their school routine, and old people who were retired? Old people also did it. And this is really interesting. They used every single part of the ground they used. So for people that didn't have large pieces of land, small back gardens for example, they planted vegetables on top of bomb shelters. And there's a video where a woman is on a flat roof and she has about this much land and she's digging it to plant food. And then at the end of the video, there's a guy digging up cement to make a field. Make a field. Not, you know what I mean. Come here for history. I know my stuff. And then there was another campaign. Can you guess what it was? Something with victory? Wings for Victory? Wings for Victory weeks were British national saving campaigns during the Second World War. with the aim of Royal Air Force aircraft being sponsored by a civil community. The British Army equivalent was Salute the Soldier Week, and the Royal Navy equivalent was Warship Week. So this is, again, where the Make Do Amend comes into being really fun. They would hold fundraising events, parades. They would hold fundraising events. One of them was a parade. And the outfits were made using the Make Do Amend. And here is a clip. If you thought Miss So-and-so is creepy, this thing... I picture it and now I'm just like, please get out of my head. This thing is called the Squander Bug. So here's a clip of a parade. Someone designed a Squander Bug and they destroy it. And I'm going to talk about the Squander Bug now, because you must be like, what are you talking, like there's people in the crowd, what's she talking about? So the Squander Bug was, I've written this down because I did some research and these were the words used to describe it. The Squander Bug, an unpleasant looking, unpleasant. So I'm going to rephrase that. The Squander Bug, an unpleasant looking or creepy AF, was created during the Second World War by artist Philip Boydell, and he was an employee of the National Savings Committee. He produced a series of sketches for press adverts, and he originally called it the Money Grub. The Money Grub could push, sell, scratch, bite and steal. The name was changed to Squander Bug, I assume not by Boydell, as he said it was meant to be a more generous, more humorous approach to the very real fear that the government had of wasteful spending. But gradually, the Squander Bug came to be known as the enemy and as a friend of Hitler. So you'd be in a shop and you'd see a poster and it'd be like, oh, go on, just buy it. And the face was creepy. And then the body had swastikas on it. Like, the whole thing is just... The campaign was extremely popular and the cartoon was adapted for use in other countries, including Australia and New Zealand. And then Dr. Seuss created... That is so fun to say out loud. I've never said his name out loud. Dr. Seuss created his own version of the Squander Bug, and that was to use in war-saving campaigns in the United States. This is where I hate that it's in my head and I've done research for it. This is an air rifle dummy. Like a target practice. You know what I mean? A target practice. Why? It's so creepy. Now it creeps you out too. But seriously, I'm showing a picture here now, but in my head I'm just picturing it and it's awful. It really is awful. In conclusion, I can't get the thing out of my head, seriously. So in conclusion, I feel like the Make Do Amend campaign was more than that. It became a community. The Make Do Amend groups were to help others to sew, knit and so on. But I also feel maybe friendships were formed. People could go to talk about their troubles without judgment because everyone understood. Everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's going to be supportive. I also feel that this sense of community in the... So I'm talking about the Make Do Amend groups when I'm saying they can go to them for advice. But I feel like the sense of community in the Make Do Amend groups like spread it out into the greater public with the same feeling. Everyone knowing that others were struggling too. Everyone being in the same boat, like I say, with the rationing of their lives. Also, this sense of community was more than emotional, it was practical too. If you had a jumper that you didn't need to pull out, and it was need because there was no want back then. So if you had a jumper that you didn't need to pull out, you would perhaps give it to someone in your neighbour. And you could give it to a stranger in the street, and because of the time and what was going on, someone would be so thankful for that. I think it made people appreciate the smaller things in life. So to sum it up, no waste, making do, mending and helping others, which I think that's a brilliant campaign. And also you've got to think, I've written this down, but the fun aspect of it as well, I find, I don't know, it makes me happy how much fun went into this campaign as well. And the creativeness, like I say, I looked for hours and I've seen so many posters and pictures and stuff. And once again, I've got like 4 pages of research and then it's a really short video. Hopefully you find it fascinating too. Apart from the Squander Bug, don't think about that. And that's the end. I still have no idea how to end my videos. But if you're new here, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and click the bell to get a notification of when my next episode is out. It's every week at Monday at 5 p.m. And next week is going to be N for Naomi's Needles, where I'm going to talk about all the needles I have. Okay. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this whole Make Do a Mend thing. And, yep. Go and watch something happy to get the Squander Bug out of your head. Alright, thank you for watching and I'll see you next week for the podcast.